Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Galactic Storyteller. I'm excited for my guest to be here today. His name is John DeMay. We are going to be talking about a landmark case involving his son, Jordan. Jordan, actually, we're going to get right into it in just a moment because I would like for you to hear it from John's perspective. But Jordan DeMay's case has gained international attention and has become a landmark case regarding sextortion, which has picked up quite a bit from 2022 on. And we're going to talk about those statistics in just a moment. So, John, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having us on and getting us exposure to your followers.
Absolutely. Will you tell us about Jordan and his story? What happened on March 25th, 2022?
Yeah, my son was 17, just shy of his 18th birthday, and on March 25th, 2022, he took his life at 3:45 in the morning in my home following a pretty intense extortion scheme that he was a victim to. He was approached by a young lady, what he thought to be a young lady named Danny Roberts on Instagram. He received a friend request from her approximately 10 o'clock or so the night prior, and he started communicating with her for a few hours, and started off as small talk, I would assume, moved into some more sexual nature, and she enticed him to send her a photo, a compromising photo of himself. So he took a picture of himself and sent it to her. He did that a little after midnight, and that's when the extortion started. And Danny Roberts was not a young, attractive young lady. It was actually a he, and it was a male from Nigeria, what we later determined to be, and that's kind of where we are at today. The extortion was very intense. It was fast paced. It was late at night. Everybody was sleeping, and they pressured him for money. They negotiated for money. They wanted $1,000. They negotiated down to 300. Jordan had to prove he was sending him the money. And when they sent him the money, it still wasn't good enough. They kept on him and on him. They were building content in the background to make Jordan believe that they were sending it out to his friend's parents and his mother and his friends and his girlfriend. All the while they weren't actually doing it, but they were pretending to do it, creating that extortion atmosphere. So he did everything he can do. He couldn't meet their demands, and he ultimately said, I'm going to kill myself right now because of you. And the extortionist said, good, go ahead, or we're going to make you do it. And within a few minutes, he shot himself in his bedroom.
I'm at a loss for words. That's shocking. I have some of the text messages right here. Have you gone through the text messages, the exchange between these three individuals and your son?
We've only been able to see very small pieces of it. This was a 6-hour period, so there was over 150 pages of transcript. I have not seen all those transcript yet. When Jordan passed away, it was a Friday morning. We obviously were in complete shock, had no idea. We were supposed to leave that morning for a Florida vacation for 2 weeks. Jordan was packed, ready to go. He was buying stuff the night before for his vacation. And so for all intents and purposes, he was leaving on vacation. So until this happened, we were supposed to go. But as we grieved on Friday and went through the process, it wasn't until Saturday afternoon when we discovered that this photo existed. And fortunately, the extortionist had sent that one photo to his girlfriend at some point. I don't know when it was sent. It was before or after, but they did send that photo to them and wanted money from them. And I believe that the photo was really the only reason we found out about this, because Jordan had actually deleted all of his history on Instagram. So when law enforcement looked at the phone, there wasn't anything there. So when we got the photo, we passed it back to law enforcement. Our local sheriff's department, who did the initial investigation, coordinated with the FBI. Some search warrants were prepared, and by Sunday or Monday that weekend, we discovered that this entire thing had happened, which at the time was a slight relief because it was at least some sort of answer. We didn't have nearly the information we do now, and it certainly didn't make things easier or better, but it was at least an answer that we were just banging our head against the wall trying to figure out. So,
which a lot of parents or people who have relatives and friends and family who suicide, they don't get an answer.
that's correct.
I mean, I don't know how much peace that provides, but it's a little something. You know, I shared with you, my son suicided just over 2.5 years ago, and we were fortunate enough to have a note. But a lot of people don't ever get that. I don't want to say closure because that never happens, but
I understand exactly what you're saying.
this text message right here that I'm going to share is from Danny Roberts, who is supposedly the young lady that was texting your son. She said, quote, "I have screenshot all your followers and tags can send this nudes to everyone and also send your nudes to your family and friends until it goes viral. All you've to do is to cooperate with me and I won't expose you." And so I'm sure you've seen that one.
Correct.
But
That's
this
actually
is the kind of messages that were being sent to your son.
yes, it was a lot of that. And those are some of the statements that are actually written in the indictments for these folks. So they're part of the court record.
Your son writes back, "I'm KMSRN, which is I'm kill myself right now because of you." And
Correct.
what's shocking to me is that the response from this Danny Roberts is, "Good, do that fast." So they were completely aware that your son was planning on ending it because of the sextortion. And
That's
they
correct.
were okay with that.
Yeah, and they actually went further and said, "Do it now." What was the comment? It says, "Do it fast, or we're going to make you do it."
Yes, that's the next one I have. "Good, do that fast or I'll make you do it."
Correct.
I can only imagine how scared Jordan must have been.
It will haunt me for the rest of my life, knowing the pain that he went through the moments before he died. And those are the things that give us strength and give me strength to spend a lot of time doing what we're doing right now and carrying that story on and making sure Jordan's legacy is moved forward for a long time to save other people's lives.
Absolutely. Now, it turns out that this Danny Roberts, there are actually 3 individuals out of Nigeria that are
Right.
responsible for this sextortion scam. Samuel and Samson Ogoshi, who are brothers, and they're young men, 20 and 22. And then you also have Ezekiel Robert, who's 19, and they are facing federal charges for an Instagram sextortion scam targeting over 100 people. So unfortunately, your son was not the only one being targeted.
No, that's correct. We found out later once they dove into this investigation and started peeling back the layers and the IP addresses and all the parts of the investigation, there was over 100 victims total that these individuals were perpetrating.
Now, all 3 men have been charged with conspiracy to sexually exploit minors, conspiracy to distribute child pornography, and conspiracy to commit stalking through the internet. And according to the New York Post, I think it's Samuel Ogoshi is charged with sexual exploitation and attempted sexual exploitation of a minor resulting in death. Now, is your son the only one that has died as a result of their sextortion?
In this particular case, I believe so, yes. So a lot of the other victims were all the way from just basically biting on the extortion part up into including sending money. Some of them did, and up include Jordan's death, which is the ultimate reason why they're extradited here. So.
Now, he's not the only one. There might be other cases with other sextortionists that have resulted in suicide. I've seen some statistics on that. Why is it that you think Jordan's case has gained such international attention?
I think because everything in our case has just really lined up well. The moon and the stars aligned in our situation, fortunately. And there really isn't any other explanation. Everything just happened smoothly right from the onset of the investigation. Once the FBI took over and was able to finally get the search warrants from Instagram, the information, they had a really good idea of where this thing was going. And so as they started their investigation, they just ran into a treasure trove of information, which ultimately led to working with the Nigerian partners and collaborating with them to jump on this case. And I will say that our FBI team was working very closely with the Nigerian FBI. They're called the EFCC.
Okay.
And their FBI equivalent. They were extremely willing to participate. They were emotionally involved in this case. I happened to meet both of the two investigators, the lead investigators from the Nigerian team that came to the United States last week. So that was very impactful. But everybody had a dog in this race. Even our local FBI agents, they were passionate about it. The relationships were strong. The information sharing was strong. The governments themselves, the Nigerian government and our government, played well together. The process of paperwork and extradition and hearings all went really smooth. Because of all that, this is the first sextortion case in the history of the country that's precluded with extradition. This has never happened before.
Mhm.
And also on the backside, the way that the FBI they had to change some things apparently on how they investigated. I don't have the details of what happened, but they basically revamped and created a new blueprint for how some of these sextortion cases are investigated. And that blueprint is now being used by other field offices throughout the country because of Jordan's case. So for the FBI team themselves and the FBI, this is a very important case for them because it was a learning tool for them and now a training tool. And for building partnerships and things with other agencies, it's kind of the same thing. So this just happened to snowball smoothly into something that's very non-conforming, if you will, and just really not normal. So that, I think that's why we're getting the exposure. A lot of the other parents are running into a lot of roadblocks, and you have to remember too, and most folks don't know this, is that every country out there either has a treaty with the United States or does not. So if this thing landed in another country where we didn't have a treaty, like North Korea, we would obviously never get anywhere with it. It would just, we have no investigative standing there. We don't have partnerships there. We don't have legal authority there. So when some of these types of cases go into those areas, there's literally nothing our country can do and nothing the FBI. So it just stops. Fortunately for us with Nigeria, there is that treaty that's already in place. And of course, those relationships grew strong and everybody worked together to fight with this one. So that's why we're here. And that's why we're hearing a lot of the other stories are not here, because it's not even possible.
Wow. Well, you know what? That's got to make you feel at least a little bit better that justice is eventually going to be served. Now, Samson and Samuel have already been extradited, and that was a recent development, correct?
That's correct.
But Ezekiel is not here yet.
That's correct.
But
Ezekiel was a little bit further behind in the arrest process. The two brothers, Samuel and Samson, were arrested earlier on and had been incarcerated in Nigeria waiting extradition. So Nigeria has their own court system and laws, and they have rights just like we do in the United States. So they went through their extradition and court proceedings relatively quickly. Again, because of the Nigerian government and the nature of this case, those things happened very quickly. We were being prepared by the U.S. Attorney's Office and the DOJ for, at least 9 to 12 months or maybe longer. Some of these things take 10, 12 years to happen, and some never happen. So there's a possibility that they would have never even been extradited. So we were kind of being prepared for the worst, hoping for the best. And here we are, within 3 months, they're on American soil, which is colossally fast.
that's amazing. So if I'm understanding you correctly, they've already been through the Nigerian system where they found guilty and then handed over to the US. Is that correct?
No, they didn't have formal court proceedings. What they're doing is they're being held on detainers through the United States, but they're lodged and arrested, and they're being held in their prison system waiting their extradition. So they have the rights just like we do. So they're not being tried for the crimes there. They're basically being held on detainers through the United States with agreement of the Nigerian government. But they do have extradition hearings and an extradition process where they are allowed to fight extradition. So if they say this, I didn't do this, and I don't want to be extradited to the United States, these charges are false, they have a process much like we would have here to fight that. I'm not sure on the logistics of how that played out. I'm assuming because of the speediness of this, I'm guessing they waived their rights to the extradition and just said fine, because they did confess. We found that out in the pretrial conference on Thursday as part of the evidence that was presented to the defense from the U.S. Attorney's Office, that they did confess to the crimes when the FBI and the Nigerian government interviewed them in Nigeria after following their arrest in February. So my educated guess on this is they probably confessed to the crimes, and then they went into their Nigerian extradition hearings and probably waived their rights to the extradition and then just voluntarily came here.
Wow. So they knew they were caught.
It seems to be at this point.
Wow. Well, according to the FBI, I'm going to read a statistic here. 12 minors who were sextortion victims died by suicide last year. They were among at least 3,000 victims of the scam nationwide, and the FBI has recorded that more than 7,000 reports of financial sextortion of minors in 2022, which is an increase of 82% from 2021. So this has become a real problem. What would you tell parents regarding monitoring your children's phones?
Well, I'll start with the statistics, and I can tell you that that's what's reported, and that's the really interesting part about this particular crime, because one, it's about sex, right? It's about photos, it's about sensitive material, and that's why this crime is such a good crime, if you will. I hate to even say that, but it really is, because you're targeting young people, late teenagers, early 20s, people that have what they believe is their established life and their clout. Most of them are working and have jobs, so they have a little bit of money to pay, and they're targeting these individuals that have, they're popular in school and they have everything going for them. So those are easy targets to say, hey, I'm going to ruin this whole life that you think you have, and they have money. So they wedge them into that corner. And they're really professional at what they do.
My understanding is that the primary target for sextortion rings would be primarily young men ages 14 to 17.
Yeah, and I think that's true.
Such an easy target.
Yeah, I think that's true. And getting back to the statistic thing, I really believe that those statistics are what's reported. Like I said, it's because it's a shameful thing. You can probably times that by 1,000 of actually how many people this is literally happening. If you're a teenager between the ages of, I would say 17 and 22 or 23, young 20s, you are being targeted. Literally everybody. If you're on social media at that age, you're being targeted. Now it's just a matter of whether you bite or not, or if you're the kind of person that just accepts random friend requests from folks, is going to depend on what severity and level you get into this, because we get them all the time. Even as adults, we just get weird things, but I don't accept friend requests from anybody. I don't even use social media that much, but when I get a random young lady with her hair up done nice and duck lips sending me a photo saying, hey, how are you? Or hello, I'm like, delete, so, but 16, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds aren't doing that. These young people are communicating that way. And frankly, young people are communicating sexually via technology too. You're not going down to the beer parties and the bars and hanging out at the beach and meeting people as much, like I probably did in my generation. They're online on dating apps. They're on social media. They're using all kinds of disappearing messaging apps and most likely sending photos back and forth to one another. That's how they're communicating. So when these teenagers, as parents, we look at them like, why would these kids send photos of themselves? And my answer is because that's how they communicate sexually. That's how they're meeting each other. That's what they do now. And if you don't think they're doing that, you're fooling yourself. So it's social media is a horrible place for young people. And we can have a conversation all day long about the dangers of social media. I mean, we all know they're there. And parents need to be honest with you, it's a horrible conversation to have, and it's really not popular. But if you're under 18, you have no business on social media. I mean, that's just the bottom line. It's not a good place. If you're okay sending your 14, 15-year-old into a strip club to hang out with some friends for the afternoon, then maybe it's okay for them to be on social media, because it's about the same thing. We don't let our kids go into bars. We don't let our kids drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes and smoke marijuana and do all these things. We don't let them drive drunk. There's all these things that we don't let our kids do. And I'm not sure why we would let them on social media. There's literally nothing good. And when parents push back on that, my comment to them is, send me an email with the top 5 reasons why social media is a good place for young people. And I'd love to get a list and compile it, because when I'm talking to folks like this, I'd love to share it. But the answer is there's none. There's zero. There's not one. But we can sit here and drink 7 cases of beer over the next 30 days and discuss this, and we wouldn't have enough time of the dangers of what's happening on social media. And the social media companies are not there to help you. They're not there to be your friend. They're there to sell you your information to other advertisers and make money. And they're not there to help in any of these situations. They're not your friend.
They're not. And social media has been directly linked to eating disorders, depression, higher
Exactly.
rates, especially within these younger kids whose whole lives are out on social media, and they think this is real.
Exactly. And that's the issue. I mean, my story is a unicorn to the 330 million people in the United States. It's rare in those numbers. But if we boil this thing down, it's not just about the suicides. It's not it's about bullying. It's about sex trafficking. It's about young women being sex trafficked. It's about young people's minds being warped in this alternate reality that's happening parallel with the real life, right? So people have their internet persona and their internet life, and then they have their real life. But the internet life is completely fake. You shut your computer and it's all done. It's an alternate reality. But unfortunately, that alternate reality changes the way you think about yourself and the way that you act in human life. So it's a problem when you have 13 or 14-year-olds thinking that they're too fat to be out, or their hair doesn't look good, and I got to do this, and I got to have this persona, and social media creates that, and it's all nonsense.
It is. Last year, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, their cyber tip line, they received about 32 million reports of suspected child sexual exploitation. So people think that this isn't happening under their own roof or to their own children. They're fooling themselves, because this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And with the sextortion, these individuals are looking for money, gifts, gift cards, just any way that they can. They're using sexual images, and that they'll hack into media accounts to get these images, hack into phones, get these images, and then they start extorting these images to the individual for, or in exchange for, money and gifts.
Right.
And so people need to be aware, especially if you've got minor children. You had mentioned, I think it was in a New York Post article, that you had stopped monitoring Jordan's phone as much. When did you stop doing that?
Yeah, I'm going to back up a little bit on that and just kind of tell your viewers that when Jordan was young, he had a phone early. His mom moved away out of state for a little while, and he got a phone at 10 or 11 years old, which I didn't really want to do, but I thought, well, it's just a phone, and we can have contact and make things easier. And so I did that, and I don't regret doing that. But I also was very, very, very cognizant of what happens online. So when I got him that phone, it was completely locked down. I mean, I had every Verizon parent control on it. I had every Apple iPhone filter parent control locked down on it. We used actually third-party apps that actually monitored his text messaging, so it would carbon copy all of his text message that came in and out of the phone. We did that for a while. We had GPS tracking, of course. We used Life 360. Actually, as a matter of fact, we still use that today. It's kind of part of our daily life now. But we did everything. I actually had a separate router in my house, a wireless router that only Jordan had access to. He did not have the passcode to our home router. And so what I did is I set that router on a timer. and then the internet would shut off at like 7 o'clock at night or something like that. So I did all these things. We have dinner every night as a family at the dinner table, traditionally. And there were times where I'd make Jordan pull out his phone and read his text messages from his girlfriend to the dinner table.
Oh, wow.
Those are some things that I did. I looked at his phone. I was the only one that had access to his Apple ID account, so he could not download apps. He couldn't add Facebook, all that stuff. He wasn't allowed on social media. But as he grew up and got into his early teenage years, he started finding workarounds from that I would punish him for. And he would log out of his Apple ID, and then he would use his buddies and log into it, and then try to get on Snapchat or Instagram or something like that. But one of my friends would call me like, "Oh, Jordan's on Snapchat or on Instagram. I saw him." I'm like, "Wait, what?" So we would always catch him. He was horrible. He always got caught in everything. But so we had to be parents in that sense too. But I literally did every single thing you can imagine and beyond. So, and here I am today talking about this story. So you could stick 1 million people in a room, and I was probably the number one parent that was strict about social media and phone use, and I'm in this mess. So you really need to just do everything you can. But going to your question now, Jordan, as he got older, I mean, he was a phenomenal student. He was very, very pleasant young man. He was just turning into a great person. Very well liked. He was an amazing athlete. So he had all these things going for him. And I had no reason by the time he started driving at 16, going on 17 years old, I had zero reason to even worry about him at that time. So I started pulling back. I wasn't monitoring as much, and I let him do his thing. And most of the time he was watching YouTube videos and stuff. And he was a weightlifter. We like to go to the gym. So we were doing a lot of watching videos and that kind of stuff. And he was watching sports videos. He was into baseball or basketball and football heavily. And so a lot of nutrition stuff. So he watched a lot of videos, listened to a lot of music, and he ultimately, he was on social media a little bit, mostly Instagram, and I believe a little bit of Snapchat, but didn't have much for Facebook. But anyway, so as he got a little older, I peeled back, and we weren't too worried about it. And Jordan was 5-6 weeks away from his 18th birthday when he died. So
He's such a handsome young man.
Oh, he was a stud. He really was. I mean, he was just he had such a diverse friendship group, and he just got along with everybody. And he was the dude that walked in and just like the whole room lit up, and
that's because of his smile.
Oh yeah. It was just like, I wish I had a smile. I don't know where he got it from, but he was just an awesome dude.
And he was prom king as well.
He was. Yep. He certainly
What did he want to be when he grew up?
He was starting to get into like athletic training. I think that was kind of the direction he started pushing for. He talked about a few different things, maybe law enforcement possibly. And I'm in the real estate business, and he was talking about maybe getting into that for a little while. And so, but he ended up having some pretty serious injuries when he was in his early high school. He actually had an ACL blow, and he had a football tackle that took his ACL out his freshman year. That actually put him out for almost a year. So as he rehabbed, and then he ended up with an ankle fracture later on, was it his senior year or end of his junior year? It was his senior year, I believe. So he had gone through some injuries, spent a lot of time in physical therapy. And so his love for athletics and all that stuff and going through these injuries, I think he started looking at maybe doing some athletic training.
Wow. Well, when I first came across your story, you were doing an interview with Nate Eaton out of East Idaho News.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was about a 27-minute segment. I had to turn it off the first time within 5 minutes because I was just a mess.
Yeah.
I was emotional listening to your story, and then I skipped over to a news story that they were covering the extradition. So I was like, okay, we're going to have, maybe a little bit of resolution and some justice here. And then I had to go back to the interview with Nate Eaton because it was such a tragedy. If you could leave our audience and the parents in particular with any sort of advice, what would you say?
There's so much to say, right? And I think the message really needs to be having conversations with your kids. I mean, just just sit down with your kids after you watch this and just talk to them about sextortion. Tell them what it is, right? Just let's get that on the table first. And then you just need to tell them that even if they do something, I'm a traditional parent. I'm always, don't do this, don't do that with my girl. I have two younger girls too, 9 and 7. It's like, stop, don't. And I did that with Jordan too. And, but at the end of the day, we have to step back a little bit and say, okay, if you do this, this is what you need to do. And with these extortion, especially online stuff, you just need to understand that the parents need to understand, and the young people need to understand that as soon as you close the lid of this laptop or shut your phone down, it stops. A lot of times, even if you sent compromising photos, a lot of times they're never going to send them. There's no point in them sending them to anybody else at that point. Additionally, even if you do send a photo, the Missing Exploited Children's group and Facebook have kind of put together a program called Take It Down. It's relatively new. And what they do is you can appeal to them, and they can find that photo all throughout the internet and pull it down. Excuse me. So I don't know how well it works. It's kind of new, but that's the technology they're trying to work on. So even if the compromising photo gets out in the internet world, they can pull it off. And I don't know if it's completely through internet or if it's just through meta platforms. Like I said, it's kind of a new thing, but it is something that's building for the defense for this. It's not going to do anything offensively, and it's certainly not going to change anything. It's just one little thing to help young people say, okay, shit, I did this. I'm going to talk to law enforcement, we'll file the complaint, and hopefully we can get this taken down. And I can tell people or not tell people, but at least the photo's down. So, but for parents, please just talk to your kids. Please report this as well. Report it to law enforcement or the Missing Exploited Children's database. They actually track and monitor all this stuff, and it helps the FBI pull through cases, and might be the key piece that they need to open something else up. So just, even if you're not going to tell friends and family about the situation that happened with you or a loved one, at least contact law enforcement and get that information in, so they can start building more data.
These kids need to stop the conversation immediately, not pay them any money, and let somebody know.
Yeah. And the other important thing is don't delete anything. It's really difficult, and it makes things a lot harder and the process a lot longer if law enforcement has to start subpoenaing social media companies for information, because they're not super willing to do it. And they will do it in circumstances. But if you sent a couple $100 and you deleted all the information, law enforcement's not going to get any information from Instagram or Facebook for anything. It's not important enough. So just don't delete anything. Just shut the computer off, talk to somebody, contact law enforcement, don't delete anything, and let them take a look at it and see what they can do. Because like I said, you might lose $300 and be embarrassed for a week, but that one little piece might be the piece that the FBI is missing to blow a case wide open like ours. So just keep that in mind. Excellent. But parents, I'm going to take it to the next step too. And parents, I think, need to really have a serious conversation with themselves about their children's use on social media, and really think about what's happening there. And if they want to let their kids use social media, that's up to them, and that's their parenting style. But I think you really need to reevaluate their thought process, because the majority of parents don't even understand what's happening on social media. They don't understand how it even works. And I tell you that when AI technology starts coming down the line, and it's already starting, these types of deep fakes are so intense and real that you won't stand a chance. Nobody is going to stand a chance on some of the extortion that's going to happen online and social media. So if you can't get a grip on what's happening on simple social media platforms, it's going to be really troublesome for you in 2 or 3 more years, when AI is easy to do and a lot of people have the technology to do it. So if your kids are going to be on social media and on a phone, their entire world the entire planet is in the fingertips of their little 14, 15, 16-year-old hands. If you're okay with that, that's fine, but you need to understand the consequences of it. So monitor, and don't let kids in bedrooms by themselves with phones. I mean, that's another important thing too. Just keep them out in the open. If they want to be on their technology, make them do it in the living room or common areas where there's people around. They should not be on their phones at night when everybody's sleeping. They should not be in their bedrooms at any time with their technology, because that's where that's where the curiosity gets these young people. That's when the pictures start going. That's when the, risque chats start happening and all the things. So please, as parents, at least keep your children away seclusively with their technology.
That's great advice. So what is next for your case? What's coming up in terms of the Ogoshis and the extradition of Ezekiel?
So right now, the two main brothers are here. We were at their arraignment in the pretrial conference last week in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is about 6 hours south of here. And matter of fact, tomorrow is a bond hearing, which is going to be probably just it's a giant dog and pony show at this point, because they're here on detainers for federal charges, but they're not citizens. So even if they were able to post bond, which would be a ton of money, they would never even be able to walk out of the facility, because they'd be immediately picked up on an ICE detainer and transferred to an ICE holding facility. So they're being lodged right now in Newaygo County Jail in a federal wing that's designated for federal prisoners awaiting trial. That's where they are today, and that's where they're going to stay. Or if they end up getting bonded and ICE picks them up, they'll go to another facility in another county. So they're either going to be in Newaygo jail facility, or they're going to be an ICE facility, but they're certainly not getting out anywhere. But the next thing after this is probably going to be a long wait. There's 150 pages just in that one transcript for our Jordan's case alone. There's over 100 other victims with transcripts. So if you just think about that small piece, let alone all the interviews, all the statements that were made, all the other documentation that was involved, the Google searching and everything, all the history that was done, there's mountains and mountains and mountains of information that these two defendants, attorneys, have the right to review, and it's going to take months. So probably going to be, March or April before we even hear anything, maybe on a trial, or at least the final pretrial conference. So it could be a while before we even start considering what they might do for a plea bargain, possibly, or if they're going to take it to trial. So,
have you seen them face to face yet?
Yes.
Did they look at you?
Samson, the younger brother, looked at me in the eye one brief second, and that was it. They pretty much kept their head down as they walked into the courtroom, and their heads down at the table most of the time.
If you could say anything directly to them, would you say anything? And if so, what would it be?
I've been asked that question a few times, and it's really hard to answer, because there's so much hate there, and there's so much confusion. It's like, for $300, right? Jordan's dead over $300. I could give you 10 times that amount if you wanted to. I mean, there's no money that's ever going to bring him back. But the question would be why. Who do you think you are? And I just don't know. I don't know if I need to say anything. I think my presence in that courtroom and my demeanor shows who I am and the resilience that we have. And I hope that they fall asleep to that every night.
Well, no doubt they will be for the rest of their lives, no matter what happens. My deepest condolences to you, to Jordan's mom, Jennifer, your whole family. He's got 2 little sisters, you mentioned.
He's got 4, actually. Yeah.
4. Wow.
I'm remarried. Jennifer and I divorced very young. I mean, Jordan was 2 or 3. And so we've obviously moved on in life. So I've been married in my life for quite a long time. So I have 2 daughters, and Jennifer has 2 daughters, also a little younger, 5 and 2, I believe. So, or 6 and 3, 5 and 3. So
how are the girls doing?
My girls are doing pretty well. My oldest is she's 9, and she had a really good relationship with Jordan. She's very athletic too. And so those 2 always were wrestling around and playing ball together and stuff. So she has probably a little bit more fond memories with him than my youngest does, but my youngest is very analytical, and she's very intelligent. And so she thinks deeply about things more. So she's the one that's asking a lot of questions and very literal about her questions. So she processes things more than my oldest. She's just kind of, just a free bird like Jordan was. And so she doesn't get wrapped up in the emotions as much, I don't think. But overall, they're doing pretty well. Yeah.
Goodness. Well, blessings to you and your family. Are there hotlines for sextortion where people can call and get help, or where do they go if something like this happens?
That's actually a really good question. And we talked about this with the Department of Justice recently. I don't believe there's a specific sextortion hotline, but the FBI does have a crisis line, which is probably going to be just as good as anything. But the problem with that is people don't ever use them. It's pretty rare. So I think the simplest thing to do is really just, you could dial 911. I mean, that's what it's there for. If you get sextorted anytime during the day or night, that's what 911 systems are. That is what it is for. They're not going to send a car flying over lights and sirens in the middle of the night. It's just a non-emergent call. They'll take the report, they'll hand it to the local jurisdiction or maybe the federal agency, and they'll follow up with you in the morning. They'll probably talk you through a few things to do to just to calm down and relax, and close your computer, don't delete things. They'll tell you all those things. Get you to a comfortable place, and then hopefully catch up with you in the next day. But probably 911 is going to be your best bet in immediately, because the sooner it's reported, the sooner that stuff can start being tracked, is better for everybody. So, but at minimum, just contact law enforcement. I really think that's the best way.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Best wishes in this case. I'll be watching and following to see what the outcome is. But again, deepest condolences, and thank you so much for being here as you move forward.
Yeah. Well,
I think you've got a lot of international support from what I've seen.
seems so.
That's good. Well, thank you so much. All right, everybody, like and subscribe. You can reach me at galacticstoryteller@gmail.com. If you're following on Rumble, my backup channel, it's Eden Rocks. You guys take care, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks again, John.
Thank you.